Good morning, a good Monday to all. It is the 24th day of February. My name is Gretchen Ho, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. Former President Rodrigo Duterte threw another tirade against President Bongbong Marcos.
Mr. Marcos is veering towards a dictatorship. Mopusta ko sa inyo, dili na manaog pagkahuman sa iyang termino.
But Malacanang downplayed it, saying it is a hoax and a product of a one-man fake news factory. The Department of Health logged nearly 44,000 cases of dengue as of February 15. That's a 56% increase from the same period of last year. Prayers continue to pour in for Pope Francis as he remains in critical condition due to double pneumonia. And in UAAP volleyball, the Lady Bulldogs survive a nail-biting 5 sets against the Lady Tamaraws. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first up on the agenda, former President Rodrigo Duterte once again took aim at President Bongbong Marcos, claiming he is veering towards a dictatorship to extend his term beyond 2028. Malacanang dismissed the claims as a hoax. More on that word war in this report.
Former President Rodrigo Duterte once again lashed out at President Bongbong Marcos during an indignation rally in Mandaue City, Cebu. In his speech, Duterte accused Marcos of following in his late father's footsteps, claiming he is veering towards a dictatorship. He alleged that Marcos has no plans of stepping down after his term ends and might impose martial law to ensure a no-election scenario, extending his stay in Malacanang.
Mr. Marcos is veering towards a dictatorship. Mopusta ko sa inyo, dili na manaog pagkahuman sa iyang termino. Pareha na sa iyang tatay, magkagubot na punta. Ang iyang buhaton, mag-declare na po martial law. Pareho sa iyang papa. So, pag martial law, why election, siya na po imuilit. Iyang gamiton tong gibuhat sa iyang tatay. Hindi na po sa gid kakanaog. Maglisod na siya. Pero munang kamo makatilawg yun mo og gubot.
In response, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin dismissed the accusations as baseless and absurd. He likened Duterte's statements to a hoax and a product of a one-man fake news factory. Meanwhile, still on fake news, House leaders commended CIDG Chief Police Major General Nicolas Torre III for his firm stance against fake news and misinformation. This came after he filed legal action against a Cebu-based political vlogger who posted a fabricated photo on social media showing him in a hospital bed and implying he was sick. Last week, Torre also filed complaints of inciting to sedition and unlawful utterances against former President Duterte over his remarks about killing 15 senators, so all his bets would win in the midterm polls.
Now, to give us his insights on former President Rodrigo Duterte's latest tirades against President Bongbong Marcos, we have Professor Richard Heydarian with us, joining us this morning. Thank you so much for waking up for me.
Good morning. Your name is Gretchen, right? I just want to make sure. Mornings
Yeah, you're
are
on
not
the
my
right show.
sharpest moments, but I'll do my best.
Hey, Richard, a good morning, a good Monday to you. Well, we start off with this spicy bit of news. Malacanang calling the former president a hoax and a one-man fake news factory. Is that the strongest statement yet from the administration on the former president? I mean, calling the former president a one-man fake news factory is pretty jarring. Is that correct?
Well, I think that's the toughest and spiciest from former Chief Justice Bersamin, because I think one of the concerns over the past years or so is that you already have a president who's been a bit too statesman-like when people felt he had to really step it up. And in fairness to President Marcos Jr., he kicked off these midterm elections, which with quite quite an assault on the legacy of the Duterte administration on all fronts, human fronts, in terms of corruption, the Farmali scandal, the West Philippine Sea issue. So people were saying, you already had a kind of a conflict avoidant president for quite some time, who's now stepping up. So it looks like finally some of his folks also in the Malacanang are stepping up. This is the thing we have been seeing, right? The lack of a kind of a Harry Roque or a kind of a Ronald Llamas in the Marcos Jr. administration, that kind of an attack dog mode approach. Because as far as the other side is concerned, President Duterte, this is his thing. This is his shtick, right? He grabs the headlines. For heaven's sake, you wake me up at 8 a.m. On the morning of Monday to discuss his latest tirade. Last week, he joked about eliminating 15 senators so that there's more room for more candidates. This is really the algorithm of Duterte. It worked for him back in 2016. He said he's going to make the Philippines a prosperous place, a safe place in 3 to 6 months. Of course, that came out as more of an exaggeration, or some would say budol. But as far as political communications is concerned, as far as putting the administration on defensive is concerned, this has been a tried and tested strategy for Duterte administration against the Marcos administration. So the question is, can the Marcos administration continue to step up, and are we going to see more spicy responses from the current president in this regard?
Okay, so a lack of a Harry Roque, as you mentioned, or a Sal Panelo, does that role now fall
I think
on
Harry
the
Roque
shoulders?
More than Sal Panelo, with all due respect. Yeah.
On the shoulders of E.S. Bersamin, or do you see this statement as the president's statement?
Well, absolutely. Well, he speaks in behalf of the president. But I think if you want to see really spicier comments, we have to see what other allies of the president have to say, whether it's Speaker of the House, Martin Romualdez, who, in fairness to him, even as early as 2023, 2024, he already had a couple of quite feisty responses to the previous administration. Whether, let's wait, maybe the First Lady at some point is going to come. Remember, it was her interview where she said, I'm batshot with Sara Duterte, that put everything into motion, meaning forcing Sara Duterte to resign and effectively making this a mini civil war within the two most powerful dynasties in this country. So we have to see also what other important figures in the administration are going to do. And in fairness to General Torre, last time I checked, of course, he's ticking all the boxes in terms of making sure that that people are reminded that there's supposed to be rule of law, and that top officials in the government are going to do their job. The NBI is also toughening up their statements. So I think we have to expect more. What we haven't seen so far, Gretchen, let me tell you, is some of the members of the alliance of the administration, I think, not stepping up. I think the other day you had a candidate running under the administration slate, just days after Marcos talking about, West Philippine Sea, matapang tayo, hindi katulad ng kabila. And then when she was asked about West Philippine Sea, ang sagot lang niya, thank you, right? Siguro hindi na pwede mga thank you. So I think there should be more pressure on the candidates of the administration to step up, especially some of the more, let's be honest, questionable elements who are suddenly with the administration now, but not long ago were with Duterte, including people, for instance, like Senator Tolentino, who in fairness has stepped up on the issue of West Philippines in recent years. But let's not forget, he was the Ronald Llamas of Duterte. He was the Political Affairs Secretary of Duterte. There are a couple of other candidates in the alliance who are quite quiet on some of these issues and perhaps have to step up and to, speak for the team, right? Be good soldiers. And that's, I think, what has been lacking so far. So in fairness to Bersamin, he's stepping up. BBM himself stepping up. Sandro, who took the lead in pushing for the impeachment against Sara Duterte, stepping up. First Lady already had stepped up the other year. The same thing with Speaker of the House. I'm waiting for some of these other candidates enjoying all the perks of running under the alliance of President Marcos Jr. to step up also and show their mettle and show where they stand on this.
Well, Richard, that is if they don't avoid the media. Because now in current surveys, they are at the top 12, and most of them are actually media avoidant. probably afraid to shake things up. But I want to get to an interesting point that you raised. All this talk about fake news, the admin decrying fake news. We have this investigation over at the House. We have PNP-CIDG Chief General Torre providing a search warrant to a Cebu-based vlogger. I mean, on one hand, we do want to have a safer environment online. But on the other hand, isn't it also scary to get into this government regulation when it comes to the online space? What do you think about all those? I mean, the Marcos camp even decrying that, even after they've been accused also of manufacturing fake news about the golden years of Marcos Sr. I mean, your thoughts on what's happening when it comes to all of these hearings about fake news?
I think, Gretchen, were you throwing shades at some of the candidates who are not showing up on your show? You had ordinary pundits like me to fill in the air. No, but kidding aside, going back to this, well, I mean, obviously democracy is not absolute in terms of freedoms, and freedoms are freedoms as long as you don't abuse them and weaponize them. And we have seen the weaponization of our spaces, our democratic spaces, not only by the Duterte-related elements, not to mention Duterte themselves, and their foreign patrons. I mean, there are concerns that as we speak, I hope this doesn't put me in trouble because I'm heading to China soon. But, there are concerns that China may be behind. There are a couple of studies from ASPI, from Aid Data, among others, have shown that China is behind some of the troll farms, some of the so-called influencers when it comes to the West Philippine Sea issue. So obviously, you're right that there could always be this potential for overcorrection. Meaning, hinayaan na natin, inabuso na yung sistema na matagal. Now, the hammer should come down. Of course, we should be worried about that. And I think Ferdinand Marcos Jr., his very name, of course, is a source of concern for a lot of people. And I think President Marcos himself knows that. So perhaps that also explains, and it's sometimes I want to be fair to the president, I think one reason why he has been conflict avoidant or avoiding some sort of much more pugnacious rhetoric is because he knows there's that baggage, right? And of course, this is project rehabilitation. But, at the end of the day, you never know. You never know. That's why it's very important for the public not to get overexcited, because I'm sure there's a certain section of the public who are excited to see finally the Dutertes are getting their comeuppance. Finally, there's something being done about it. But I think us in the media, civil society, academics, among others, we also have to be very vigilant and to make sure that there's no overcorrection when it comes to the weaponization and abuses of our democratic spaces by the Dutertes, their foreign patrons, or elements who have been spreading disinformation over the past decade, basically.
Well, what happened in Cebu is quite worrying because a search warrant was issued towards that Cebu-based vlogger, and they got his phone. They also got his laptop. And I think, sabi niya, parang dinownload daw yung content niya at wala na siyang magawa. But on the other hand, how do you legislate against fake news? How do you determine what is real and what is fake? Is government in charge of that? I mean, we threw those questions to Congressman Barbers. Sinasabi niya, ang media nga, ang mga journalists nga, meron ng, kumbaga, accountability to the KBP. What more in the social media space? But also, why should we put that in the hands of Congress? Those questions arise, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. These are basic, fundamental questions that have been bedeviling all sorts of democracies. Back in the day when current President Trump for a while temporarily was suspended on Twitter and also on Facebook, among others, top democratic leaders back then, like the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, came out and said this is not a decision that has to be made, for instance, by tech companies, right? That there has to be much more democratic constitutional procedure to deal with these things. At the same time, there are people who say that tech platforms who are now even more powerful than media companies, led by these tech billionaires who are also politically motivated and increasingly politically involved, they should also bear responsibility because they're de facto publishers. So they have to have more effective algorithms in place in order to detect and take out some of the disinformation, if not entirety of the disinformation material out there. So these debates actually came out in the recent hearings in the Congress vis-a-vis the issue of disinformation, and when they invited some of the alleged purveyors of disinformation. So these are normal, natural debates we're gonna have. All I can say is that I used to be based in Australia a lot back in the day when Australia was going through a very, very heated debate about what to do with malign foreign interference. I remember very well the first time I visited Australia in 2011. Back then, Kevin Rudd, they had a Mandarin-speaking top prime minister and officials who was boasting about how, Australia is part of this Asian community, etc. So I understood viscerally what a big jump that was within half a decade, where suddenly Australia is talking about blocking Huawei from investing in Australia, when Australia was talking about, cracking down on certain politicians who allegedly had malign influence, shaping their decision making, including, for instance, Senator Daciari. And then, of course, I was also based in Taiwan as a visiting scholar, National Trenchi, before the pandemic. So looking at this very vibrant democracies, I think one thing we have realized is that it is going to be contentious, it's going to be difficult, but it's doable. We do have working examples of vibrant liberal democracies like Taiwan, like Australia, among others, have been able to balance democratic freedom against national security. At wag natin kalimutan, isa tayong frontline state pagdating sa issue ng West Philippine Sea, pagdating sa issue ng Taiwan. Unfortunately, vulnerable talaga tayo sa malign foreign interference. And because you have the Duterte element and suspicions that the Dutertes are being backed by a foreign power, which also happens to be a rival in the West Philippine Sea, the stakes are extremely, extremely high. So hindi lang itong usapin ng PNP, hindi lang ito usapin ng NBI. I think eventually AFP and other important elements have to come in. That's why it's important also for us in the civil society to come out to make sure we don't over-securitize our environment. Because if we over-securitize it, then mamaya baka bati tayo matamaan when we are critical of the administration on certain issues. So Gretchen, you're absolutely right. It's a difficult balancing act, but in my opinion, something had to be done after a decade of allowing the Dutertes and their essentially cronies and proxies weaponizing and abusing our democratic space at the expense of, well, a lot of us, right, including us in the media.
Well, Richard, on a final note, what do you think is causing this shift in the tone of the administration? Do you think it is, I guess, the fervor for the campaign season? Do you think that it is, we've talked about it, survival of both the Duterte House and the Marcos House. But another thing that I'd like to talk about is this statement that Malacanang made over the weekend, kasama to dun sa kanina, yung we will not backslide into the oppressive ways of the previous administration when critics were jailed upon trumped-up charges and when kill orders were publicly issued with glee and obeyed blindly. Do we take this to be the stance of the administration when it comes to the ICC? Are they making a stronger stance here?
I want to be careful about saying anything about ICC because we got quite burned last year after really getting some encouraging, signals early on that there could be even an ICC warrant of arrest soon. Now, obviously, the ICC question is a little bit under question also in light of the Trump administration aggressively going after them, meaning including their chief prosecutor, Mr. Khan. But I don't think Trump would care if a supposed pro-China ex-president in somewhere like the Philippines, for instance, is pursued by the ISIS. I don't think Trump cares about it. Cares more about his allies in Israel like Netanyahu, among others. But having said that, yun yung ipit talagang Marcos Jr. administration kasi unang-una, aliado sila ng mga Dutertes. So when you're allies, obviously you know each other's secrets and the skeletons in the closet. Pangalawa, si BBM parati alam niya na dahil Marcos Jr. siya, meron talaga siyang baggage at gusto nila magkaroon ng rehabilitation. So pangalawang problema nila. Pangatlo, alam natin pagdating sa ating ekonomiya and national security and actually yung ating hidwaan with China in the West Philippine Sea. Pag ikaw si Pangulong Marcos Jr., you want to avoid unnecessary conflict as much as possible. So that may explain bakit over-patient si BBM over the past year or so. But I think Sandro Marcos pretty much summed it up when he said, kung gusto nila huhukayin yung lolo ko, di ba? Na ganun na yung level ng discourse. Na openly there's a assassination threat against my mom and my uncle and my dad among other things. This is crossing a certain line. So I think both sides are feeling na hindi lang ito usapin ng election at magpapogi or feeling strong man or magproject ng strength during elections. Nagiging existential threat na yun. But I would say it's much more even existential for the Dutertes because there's always going to be the Damocles sword of the ICC warrant of arrest there, despite all of the setbacks and delays. There's going to be also those cases in NBI against Sara Duterte, and not to mention now General Torre adding another case against the father. And not to mention, marami pang pwedeng huhukayin ng administration pagdating sa dating administration. I mean, let's be honest, my goodness, Parmali scandal, gentleman's agreement sa West Philippine Sea. I think sometimes ang problema sa administration is that they have an embarrassment of riches. Sa dami nilang pwedeng kakasuhin sa kasalukuyan, sa dating administration, I think sometimes they're wondering what is the most effective strategy moving forward, and perhaps that blindsided them for a while. I can see your next guest is coming in, so I'll just keep it there. What I'm saying is, mainit ng elections, but this is not just another heated election rhetoric. This feels to me an existential battle between two important dynasties, and both of them have finally recognized that that's the case. Talagang matira ang malakas, and tignan natin if there's going to be an impeachment effectuation within the foreseeable future.
All right,
Gretchen,
thank you so much.
for your very early morning invite.
We might have you again Monday morning because it does feel like a pattern. Every weekend may nangyayari, may sumasabog, ano. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Matters. We have Professor Richard Heydarian weighing in. On to more election matters. The Comelec is now looking into an alleged incident of vote buying in Benguet. But Chairman George Garcia said that the evidence they have seen is not enough for now. This comes after photos of a supposed membership ID being distributed with cash circulated online. The ID includes a name and logo of a party list. The poll body said it would be better if there are also photos of the actual vote buying, or if someone who received the cash would submit an affidavit. Meanwhile, Pope Francis remains hospitalized and in critical condition as doctors continue to closely monitor his condition. Over the weekend, the 88-year-old pontiff suffered a prolonged asthmatic respiratory crisis while being treated for double pneumonia. He was given high-flow oxygen therapy to assist his breathing. Pope Francis also underwent blood transfusions after tests revealed a low platelet count. However, blood tests further showed that the Pope has mild kidney failure, but doctor says it was under control. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines has urged the faithful to continue offering prayers for Pope Francis. Don't go away. More on Morning Matters when we return. Welcome back. You're still with us here on Morning Matters. Now that dengue cases are rising anew, what could we and the government do? To weigh in on that, we have former Health Chief and now Congresswoman Janet Garin joining us via Zoom. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters. Congresswoman, I think you're on mute.
Oh, apologies
There
for
you go.
Thank
there
you for
you go. I can
inviting
hear
me,
you
Gretchen.
now. Okay. We have an outbreak in Quezon City, 56% increase in cases this February. Your reaction to the increasing dengue problem, could this have been prevented?
Definitely. When infodemic was allowed, or meaning fake medical news was allowed, creating scare against among those who intends to have their children vaccinated against dengue, then it became a major killer for all our preventive measures. Now, the problem, Gretchen, is that people will let us expect that with the 5S strategy, it will be effective. And time and again, that the World Health Organization has told us, not only the Philippines, but the global community as well, that dengue has become hyper-endemic. In other words, it is present all throughout the year with bouts of epidemics, considering that we have climate change, there's a change in the behavior of mosquitoes, they have been more aggressive, and if we have more cases, it is expected that the virus will mutate. And in this case, what we are thankful is the fact that in the Philippines, we already have trained doctors to handle the case. Unfortunately, the problem there is we are on the curative stage, not the preventive stage, because the strategy that is being forwarded by the Department of Health is only partially effective. Ilang dekada na kasi tayong nananawagan ng paglilinis, pagsusugpo ng mga breeding sites ng mosquitoes. Well, these are laudable. This is not enough.
Well, we all do know what happened in 2016 with the Dengue vaccine. In hindsight, what do you think were our learnings from that? What did government do wrong? Did we rush the approvals of the vaccine?
Definitely no. That was the script of those who were behind the fake news propagation. The Dengvaxia scare was actually created to go after the former president, Noynoy Aquino. And the victims of this, of course, were the scientists, vaccinologists like me. We're only a few, and many other public health practitioners. The approval of the vaccine was not rushed, considering that it was done with 7 other countries. At kitang-kita naman na hindi tayo ang pinakaunang nag-approve ng bakuna. It was approved by Brazil and Mexico. Both are actually WHO national regulatory agencies. In other words, they don't do FDA like the Philippines. They really do research and clinical trials. And even the Philippines was part of the clinical trial. But then I believe it started in 2005, the clinical trials, and ended in 2013 or 14, I think. I just forgot the exact year. However, because the environment was very ripe for issues against the former president and the former administration, they cannot find any corruption case against former President Pinoy, and then they ended up using health as an avenue to hit the previous administration. Kasi alam naman natin kapag kalusugan, kapag buhay, syempre talagang takot na takot yung mga magulang at takot na takot yung mga tao. And what is very painful here is that during those time and even after this time, offices that are actually part of the government. That time we had DOJ, we had the Prosecutor General, and very glaring was the Public Attorney's Office. These are government-funded or taxpayers' money-funded government agencies that were creating the scare, part of the scare. They were hiring non-experts. They were misrepresenting information and facts before congressional and Senate hearings. At yun nga, yan ang nangyari. Unlike, I believe, the other countries have started their vaccination program. Tumataas ang kaso ng dengue nila, pero naging mild na ito, no? With the hospitals not being congested, with almost 0 deaths.
We do remember that there were 8 deaths or 8 charges from those families whose children died because of the dengue vaccine. The dengue vaccine could cause severe dengue in individuals who had never been previously infected with the virus. I mean, hindi po made up yun. Meron po mga namatay talaga.
No,
dahil
Gretchen,
dito sa
that's basically, like, I'm sorry, but I have to correct you. When you mentioned 8 children died because of the dengue because of the vaccine, that's entirely false. Kaya nga, ang daming nabudol sa announcement na yun. Because this was actually an announcement in France, confined within the medical community, in its application to change the label. So the exact statement was actually in its further trial, consisting of, it's the trial for a kit. They were looking for a test kit consisting of 3,000 subjects. So malit yan. Those who have not had dengue yet, no, ang hindi pa nagkasakit ng dengue, tapos nabakunahan at nagkasakit, no, at nahawaan ng dengue, there is a chance of 0.0003% to have severe dengue, which is defined as +1 day of hospitalization, no deaths. Because that's how you do clinical trial. You use the old terminologies. But if you look at the definition in the new terminology, it's not severe dengue anymore. It's just that you cannot use the new terminology. Kasi di ba parang HIV, dati-rati, lahat takot na takot. Pero it came out na mahahawa ka through sexual contact and blood products, not through saliva. In this case, in 2011, the international community changed the definition of severe dengue and hemorrhagic dengue because we already knew, we have a lot of information more about the illness. So in this case, ang nakalagay doon, for those who have had not dengue yet and you were vaccinated, you are fully protected up to 2.5 years On the third year, it will slowly decline, so much so that 0.0003% will have the probability of severe dengue in its old definition, which is translated into plus 1 day of hospitalization.
Well,
And that's why they
Congresswoman,
went further into calculating and quantifying ano bang mga bansa ang kailangan ng testing, anong bansa naman ang hindi kailangan ng testing, like the Philippines. Our zero prevalence is 93%. Ibig sabihin, 93% ng ating mga kababayan ay nagka-dengue na, alam mo man o hindi pa. Because yan ang ipinapakita ng ating datos. Because the dengue is a Philippine product. It was
Congresswoman,
discovered in the Philippines. It kept on mutating the Philippines. It became a Philippine export. And that's basically the fake news that happened previously, Gretchen. Kasi walang boses ang mga scientists. And we were actually amazed by how our words were twisted, how information was actually being cut and spliced. In other words, ito ang naging isang malaking fake news all over the world, and it paved way for many scientists to rethink that we have to get out of the conference rooms, the laboratories, and the research centers and learn how to communicate.
well, the families are actually
And
saying that
ulitin
they
ko
will
lang,
still
there were no
appeal
8
this.
children who died.
Oo.
In fact, there were 8 cases that were dismissed because the Department of Justice realized and we were able to prove that these children were not vaccinated. So number of cases, I can't recall, but I believe it's almost 300. No, 300. Kasi lahat na lang ng batang nabakunahan, kunyari namatay sa appendicitis kasi hindi pinaoperahan, inattribute to dengue. Yung namatay sa tumor, yung namatay sa leptospirosis, yung namatay sa isang infectious disease na hindi natin pwedeng sabihin, yung nagka-amoeba na hindi dinala sa ospital, hindi ginamot, at nag-hypovolemic shock na sobrang dehydration, dengue ang ginawang reason. In fact, that was the question. Why was
I
the
do know that
autopsy report of
we
those...
do have deep wounds over this history with dengue. How do you propose that we go about it now? Meron po bang mga bagong... We have deep wounds. We have deep wounds over what happened with dengue. How do you propose we go about this now? Do we have a new vaccine that is close to getting approved or getting FDA approval?
Well, that is now the challenge to the Department of Health. And that is the challenge to our government kasi inalaw nila ang peking balita na mamayagpag nung nakaraang administrasyon. So again, that remains a challenge to them. But on a personal note, and as a vaccinologist, I would recommend that it be allowed even in the private sector. Kasi mali naman na nagkaroon nga ng pamamayagpag, government-funded fake news propagation ang nangyari. Pero kung titingnan natin, bakit magsasuffer pating private patients? We have a lot of patients now going to Singapore and to Thailand simply because of the vaccination. Deep wounds, definitely. Kasi kaming mga public health practitioners at scientists, ang kinaracter assassination. But how about the propagators of fake news? How about those responsible for fake autopsies in the public attorney's office? How about those who mishandled the 2 billion insertion under the public attorney's office for ambulance for case build-up? At yun namang 1 billion taon-taon na inalot para sa kanila kasi kunyari, lahat ng sakit related na lang sa bakuna. Was this used appropriately? Walang accountability eh. And that's the problem in the Philippines. Parang pwede kang it's okay to be an advocate of something, but if it costs lives, then it's a different matter.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the latest dengue outbreak. We have Representative Janet Garin joining us on Morning Matters today.
Thank you, Gretchen.
In weather, 2 weather systems are currently affecting the country. Easterlies will bring rains over most parts of the Philippines. These include Eastern Visayas, Central Visayas, Negros Island region, and Caraga. Meanwhile, the northeast monsoon or amihan will likely trigger rains over Luzon. Affected areas include Cagayan Valley, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Aurora. Metro Manila will also experience isolated rains due to the amihan. In sports, Gilas Pilipinas closed its FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers campaign with an 87-70 defeat to New Zealand. Tohi Smith-Milner powered the Tall Blacks with 25 points, while Chris Newsome led Gilas with 13 points. The Philippines finished the qualifiers with a 4-2 record, trailing New Zealand's 5-1 slate. With the qualifiers done, Gilas shifts focus to the FIBA Asia Cup in August. Over in UAAP Women's Volleyball Tournament, the NU Lady Bulldogs stayed unbeaten at 3-0 after a gritty 5-set win over the FEU Lady Tamaraws. Alyssa Solomon led NU with 24 points while Bella Belen added 21. Ateneo also secured its first win of the season, sweeping UP behind Sobe Buena's 17-point performance. And when we return, let's talk about recent issues and politics with Congresswoman France Castro. Don't go away. Morning Matters will be back. I'm Gretchen Ho, and this is Morning Matters. Senate President Cheese Escudero said there is no need for senators to hold a caucus to discuss Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment trial. Escudero stressed that the Senate, acting as an impeachment court, must adhere to established procedures as done in the cases of Joseph Estrada, Merceditas Gutierrez, and Renato Corona. He also cautioned that any procedural misstep or undue haste could give Duterte legal grounds to challenge the proceedings. Senator Coco Pimentel earlier suggested starting the trial in March. Let's get some reactions on that. Joining us now in the studio is Congresswoman and senatorial candidate France Castro. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen.
Ano pong tingin niyo doon sa sinabi ni Senate President Cheese Escudero na maaaring ma-question ang legality ng proceedings kapag minadali?
Well, sila naman yung gagawa, no? The Senate would craft yung mga terms, mga grounds, no, doon sa gagawin nilang impeachment trial. So it's up to them. So tingin ko naman walang legal impediment doon sa sinasabi or even the caucus, no, that being being suggested by Coco Pimentel, Senator Coco Pimentel. So wala namang tingin kong legal impediments.
Well, speaking of legal impediments, ngayon pa lang, mayroon ng mga petition against it. Parang I think there are 3 petitions questioning the constitutionality of this impeachment trial, kung kamusta yung proseso na nangyari sa Kongreso. Yung kay VP Sara, ang sinabi po doon ay yung impeachment complaint ay napako doon sa opisina ni Secretary Reginald Velasco. I remember you complaining about the delay in that the first 3 complaints before the 4th one was transmitted. Tingin niyo po ba ay wala pong nangyaring mali doon sa proseso na yun?
So tingin namin wala naman nangyaring mali. Though we are complaining about the yung pagtigil ng 3 complaints doon sa Secretary General, but the 4th complaint completes it all. Ang ibig sabihin nun, kasi may 2 procedure. So if there are complaints endorsed by congressman, di ba, na-endorse siya, ay pwede na yan, pero hindi naman nakuha kasi yung 1/3, at least 1/3 of the numbers of representatives. But the 4th complaint garnered more than 1/3. Kaya another point kasi, or another method kasi, is if the complainants are the members of the House of Representatives themselves and they get already 1/3.
So you didn't find anything questionable about the whole process?
No, wala namang questionable doon. Kasi yung first 3, na naman yun, although nilagay yan sa archive, pero ang inactionan ng House of Representatives was the 4th complaint.
Pero
So,
hindi po ba parang medyo inupuan ng opisina? To which the Vice President's team said that this was a grave abuse of discretion, the freezing of the first 3 complaints.
Well, bibilang lang yung 10 days kasi kapag ito ay napunta na doon sa speaker, doon sa office ni speaker, bibilang siya ng 10 days bago doon sa... Kasi wala siyang 1/3 yung first 3 complaints, kaya bibilang siya ng 10. So, tingin namin, okay naman yun na delay.
Oh, there were a group of lawyers who also said na hindi man lang napag-usapan, hindi ito nabuksan, hindi ito na parang nabigay na kaagad, na-transmit na kaagad, nabigay na sa opisina ni Speaker, tapos nabigay na kaagad sa Senate. Ano ba yung nasa rules? Hindi ba dapat mabuklat mo na yung anong nilalaman nun to sort it out, to reconcile the 4 versions, what everybody agrees on? Hindi po ba ganun yun?
Hindi na ganun yun. Kasi may 4th complaint na na-complete na yung number of required members of the House. Kaya automatic na yun. Pero halimbawa, may 3 complaints, wala yung 4th. Pero kailangang harapin itong 3 kung wala na talaga itong 4th. Na-receive ng speaker, tapos kailangan i-endorse ng speaker doon sa Committee on Justice for discussion. Pero merong 4th na nakakuha ng enough number of complaints.
Well, it is being challenged now at the Supreme Court, which is also what is happening over at the Senate. Natatakot po sila that the whole process could be questioned because there are questions over kung pwede bang maipasa from the 19th Congress to the 20th Congress. Pag nasimulan na, isa po yun. Meron pong concerns din kung yung ibig sabihin ng forthwith. Yun naman ang argument ng kabilang kampo.
Yes,
I mean, kayo po sa palagay po ninyo, agree po ba kayo sa timeline na binigay ni Senate President Chis Escudero na pagdating na lang ng June 2?
Well, hindi kami nag-agree doon.
Or after the SONA pala. Sorry, after the SONA. Yes, correct.
Or after the SONA. So, we do not agree. So, it's kasi yung forthwith sinasabi, immediate. So it is the mandate of the Senate, the senators, na naharapin agad yon kapag napunta na sa Senado yung complaint. So tingin natin ay parang delaying tactics ito ng Senate President. Pero meron pa namang enough time hanggang June 30 pa naman yung 19th Congress, and sinasabi din naman that it could pwedeng tumawid dun sa 20th Congress.
What is your...
Pero ayaw na natin yung mangyari. Gusto na natin ay matapos na yung impeachment at trial ng 19th Congress.
Ano po napupulsuhan niyo sa Senado? Bakit po kaya ito ay dinidelay? Is it because of the campaign period?
Well, sinasabi naman, di ba, merong campaign period, baka naman yung iba nagbabakasyon pa, mga ganon. So, sana hindi ganon. Sana isipin talaga ng mga senador na immediate ito, concerns accountability of an impeachable official, kaya mahalaga ito sa mga taong bayan. So, kaya dapat harapin na ito ng Senate.
Pero ano po yung tingin po ninyo? Ito ay may chance pa na ma-hold ito during the whole campaign period. What is your group going to do about it? Are you going to file another petition?
Well, napo-foresee naman namin na matatapos ito before the 19th Congress ends. Katulad din ng aking pag-asa, 'di ba? They are saying that we have not wala nang enough time ito, yung impeachment, pero umasa pa rin ako na magkakaroon ng may impeach si Sara Duterte. Kaya yun na nga yung nangyari. Kaya ako rin with the time no March, 4 months pa na pwedeng harapin ng Senado ito. At kung titignan naman yung mga documents, yung mga evidences, especially yung second article on betrayal of public trust, kitang-kita naman yun noong mga hearing ng Committee on Good Government and Accountability, no, doon sa misuse of fund.
Ano po gagawin po ninyo kapag sakasakaling hindi po ito mapakinggan during the 4-month period of the campaign? Are you also going to file another petition to question if they started it forthwith or hindi? Pinasa nyo na yun?
Ang ginagawa na natin ngayon ay we are consulting the complainants na yung first to third complainants na to move, no, we can pressure the Senate no para ano na no to start
Those who filed
with
the first to third impeachment complaints, you
so
mean?
sila yung sila yung talagang inip na matuloy itong impeachment trial na to. Kaya ongoing yung mga negotiations and meetings noong mga iba't ibang mga groups.
Puntahan po natin ang inyong kandidatura. O kayo po ay tumatakbo bilang isang senador sa ilalim ng ACT Teachers Party List. Makabayan Bloc's numbers aren't too good. Sa ngayon, wala pa po sa inyo ang makakapasok. Sa surveys, surveys, wala pa makakapasok dun sa Magic 12. Ano po ang game plan natin?
Well, sa ngayon talagang puspusan no yung mga nominees or yung mga senatorial bet ng Makabayan in groundworking in the different communities. So, yun yung ginagawa ng Makabayan. So, we are 11, no? So, sa iba't ibang mga areas pumupunta kami para mangampanya. So, yun yung ginagawa natin. Kasi wala naman kaming pwedeng ipam-publish or ads or tarpaulin na malalaki, whatever. So, talagang, talagang groundworking.
It is going to be far-fetched because of the numbers. Meron po ba kayong plano makipag-alyansa para matulungan po ang kandidatura ng Makabayan Bloc?
No. So, kasi kami, buo na kami, no? 11. Kulang na lang ng isa. So, yung 11 na ito ay talagang, talagang, we have a complete lineup na of different leaders ng iba't ibang mga sektor. And we are hoping na ang magdadala sa amin ay yung aming mga constituents o yung aming mga sektor na kung saan kami ay kami ay naglilingkod.
Bakit po Senado? I mean, alam ko po last term niyo na bilang isang congresswoman in the House. Pero bakit po kayo tumatakbong senador? Ano pong tingin ninyong maaari nyong madala doon?
So, gusto natin na magkaroon ng boses ang teachers sa Senado, magkaroon ng boses ang education sector sa Senado at kasi may mga halimbawa may mga bills na pending sa Senado na hindi nagagalaw, no, or hindi man lang umusad or
Katulad
hindi
po ng alin?
Like for example, yung aming yung tungkol doon sa lowering of optional retirement age. So, ang tagal na noon, 2023 pang nasa Senado. Ay, ito yun from 60 to 56, yung retirement age sana ng mga government employees, including teacher. Pero hindi ito gumalaw doon sa Senate. So, kailangan talaga meron talagang senador na po-focus doon. Katulad din dati sa Congress, we don't have representatives sa House of Representatives. Kaya, yung mga bills or yung mga proposed na mga policies ng mga teachers, hindi rin masyadong gumagalaw kasi walang walang talagang nag-focus.
Hindi po ba si Senator Sherwin Gatchalian ang nakatoka sa edukasyon?
Merong
sa
iba
Senado?
rin Merong iba't iba rin na, like for example, yung Laura, ang focus doon ay ibang senador. No, doon sa education, si Sherwin Gatchalian. Pero dapat kulang meron pa kaming dapat madagdagan.
Kung kayo po ay mabibigyan ng pagkakataon, paano niyo po susolusyonan yung krisis sa edukasyon sa bansa?
Very systemic ang krisis ng education sa bansa natin. So, unang-una ko siguro bill na ipapas ay education will be the first in the budget. At least 6% of the gross domestic product should go to the education sector. So that means doble yung yung budget sa education. And then yung para ma-solve yung mga infrastructure problem, mga rooms, yung perennial problems on lack of classrooms, tapos magkaroon dapat ng hiring of teachers. Hindi lang 10,000 every year. Kasi simula nung Duterte administration, 10,000 na lang yun Dapat ay at least 30,000 dahil kulang talaga ang mga teachers natin. And then reduce class size. 35 students per class sana, Maximum of 50 in the exigency of the service. Pero dapat merong additional compensation yung mga teachers na nagtuturo ng more
Nabasa
than
niyo po ba
35.
yung latest na EDCOM report? Ito, sinabi niya yung problems natin. Actually, tinukoy nito na mas specific sa early education, for one, kailangan bigyan ng pansin yung preschool age, which is I think 3 to 5 years old. Dahil doon pa lang nagkukulang na tapos tawag dito, nag-iipon-ipon, pumupunta sa older ages. I mean,
Yung 5 years old kasi yun yung kinder, yun yung simula ng formal education. Yung 5-year-old.
pero yung sinabi po nila, itong early childhood, which is 3 to 5 years old, I think is the
Okay.
problematic. And then, there's also a problem with it. Of course, yung employability within the K-12. Also, a lack of principals.
Lack of principals,
being very more specific when it comes to this EDCOM report.
Yes. Another concerning issues brought about by the EDCOM report was yung 62% ng mga teachers ay hindi nagtuturo nung kanilang specialization. So, kailangan ma-solve ito ng Department of Education. Kasi ang nangyayari na lang, may mga teachers na na-assign, kahit na major sa math or kahit na major sa anumang subject, ilalagay siya doon sa ibang mga subject. So,
paano po kaya natin susolusyonan yun?
dapat talaga ilagay yung mga teachers na qualified na magturo noong mga subject area.
And your
Hindi
proposal
lang-
is to hire more?
Yes, to hire more. At syempre, training ng mga teachers din. Hindi sapat yung hindi ka major tapos iti-train ka. Hindi yon, dapat talaga specialization. Tapos doon sa mga bata na may proposal din kami na dapat talaga magkaroon ng lunch ang mga bata, especially yung mga elementary. Kasi ako as a teacher, naranasan ko may mga bata talaga na hindi kumakain pagpasok sa eskwelahan. So, anong maiintindihan nila doon sa lesson? So, dapat magkaroon talaga ng yung truth, honest to goodness na mga feeding program, especially from kinder to grade 6.
Actually, meron namang feeding program Yung
Merong
pagbabudget
feeding-
lang.
Yes.
Pagbabudget lang at pagbaba nun, kasi sa ngayon, nakadepende yon sa budget ng LGU na may hawak doon sa mga eskwelahan ng mga daycare center.
Meron ding
tsaka
budget
ng
din naman ang may budget din naman ang
National,
DepEd
meron,
from 5-year-old to grade 3.
But do you think the solution is really to put more money into it? I mean, or,
Yes,
or
yes.
to actually direct where it's supposed to be?
Yes, kaya nga ang proposal talaga namin ay
Okay.
yung 6% ng GDP, no, doblehin talaga yung budget sa education.
Ano po ang, kamusta na po yung kaso po? Kayo po ay nakasuhan no, ng isang Davao court convicting you and 12 others over the rescue of LUMAD students. What is the update on that?
So,
At ano po ang kwento nun? Lagi po kasing...
Lumalabas sa ano.
lumalabas. Yan po ang batikos na binabato po sa inyo.
Well, it is in the Court of Appeals. Naka-appeal yun. So, 13 kami, no, na we call ourselves Talaingod 13. So, nagsimula ito doon sa pagre-rescue namin, doon sa mga bata na they are harassed, they are militarized doon sa school nila, no, na talagang gustong ipadlock. Tapos tumawag yung mga teachers doon sa school na nagpaparescue sila. Nandoon kami para magkaroon ng National Solidarity Mission. Kinabukasan sana. Pero nung gabing yun, nag-rescue na kami ng mga bata dahil nga pinaalis na sila yung mga bata doon sa eskwelahan. So, ang issue dito, Gretchen, malalim talaga, no? Before that incident, alam natin, merong militarization, may mga evacuation sa mga LUMAD communities. Diba, sabi pa nga ni Duterte noon, bobombahin ang mga LUMAD school. I mean, nangyari yun. Nawala yung more than 200 na LUMAD schools at talagang mula doon nagkaroon na talaga ng
But did you take them
harass.
against their will? Because
No,
abduction
so
po
syempre
ang
hindi. So, ang kaso kasi is other forms of child abuse. So, yun yung, I cannot talk of merit kasi ako
Correct.
yung, so, ang kaso ay, ang nangyari talaga ay nirescue namin yung mga bata. So, yun talaga yung pangyayari doon na naglakad daw yung mga bata
Pero ang
for 3
complainant po
hours.
dito, sino po ang complainant?
PNP. At saka yung...
It's not the parents of the the LUMAD children.
Oo, hindi naman. Mga PNP
Ano po,
tsaka yung...
but this is an already, it's a court conviction already. Ano po ang
Yes,
binabalak
oo.
po ng kampo po ninyo?
Well, naka-appeal siya sa Court of Appeals and hopefully mabaliktad
Is at
yung
that stage.
Kasi may 4 na pastor na inakwit na kasama namin. So, tingin natin absurd yung decision.
Itong top story po natin kanina, nakita po natin na may maaanghang salita ng Malacanang laban sa dating presidente, calling him a hoax and a one-man fake news factory. What are your thoughts as everything played out? Kasi pati yung Marcos administration, I mean, they have also been accused of spreading false narratives. I mean, ano pong nasa isip po ninyo as nakikita niyo po itong mga kaganapan?
Well, itong nangyayaring yung nangyayari sa Duterte at Marcos, walang gain dyan yung ating mga mamamayan. Nag-a-accuse sila sa isa't isa. Well, pareho naman sila no, na nag-e-employ ng fake news. At ito, yung sinasabi ni Duterte na yan ay tingin ko, sa amin kasi baliwala yung mga sinasabi niya dahil hindi kami naniniwala. Maraming sinasabi si Duterte na hindi naman talaga totoo. So, ang dapat na gawin na lang ng Marcos administration ay isolve niya yung inflation, yung unemployment, yung problema natin sa economic crisis. Baka yun yung dapat na asikasuhin. Kasi ang mga mamamayan natin baka magkaroon uprising doon sa mga nangyayari economic crisis.
Pero tingin niyo po ba yung House hearing on fake news ay pupunta sa tamang direksyon? Kumpiyansado po ba kayo doon?
Well, kami naman ay dapat ay igalang pa rin yung nasa konstitusyon, no, yung freedom of expression and freedom of speech. Kaya tignan lang kaya dapat ay magkaroon talaga ng linya kung ano yung disinformation, misinformation, no, kaya kailangan yun kasi nakakaano rin may mga like for example in us, yung mga red tagging na yan, disinformation yun. Kailangan magkaroon lang talaga ng rules or guidelines kung paano yung mga vloggers ay magsasabi na totoo. Dapat totoo yung sinasabi nila, hindi yung naninira.
Okay, maraming salamat for joining us today on our hot seat here in Morning Matters. We have Congresswoman and Senatorial candidate Castro. joining us and giving us her time this morning. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Well, tomorrow, February 25, marks the 39th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution, which ended the 20-year dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos Sr. This year's commemoration, themed EDSA 39, Hindi Ka Nag-iisa, features a series of activities throughout the week. For the second year, President Bongbong Marcos has not declared February 25 a holiday, though several schools nationwide have suspended classes to mark the occasion. And that is it for today's episode of Morning Matters. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time.